Hello and welcome. Thank you. Oops. I just accidentally turned the countdown back on. There we go. Still getting used to doing that. I've just started doing that recently. I think it helps with, getting things going, but I'm still having a little trouble with how to do that. But anyway, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. It is so great to have you here. Today I have my guest host, Kitty, the Empress of Hell.
Hey,
And
everybody.
and our special guest is Tracy, Keto and Krime. Hello, Tracy.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Granny and Kitty.
And I am really excited about the topic for this program because I was on Tracy's show just a few days ago, and I asked her to come on this show, and I asked her to suggest a topic, and we kind of came up with the idea together. And I never would have thought of doing the crimes of Christianity, and yet we could talk about this for days, couldn't we? Mm. Yeah. So let's start out with Tracy. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your channel and a little bit about what you do?
My name is Tracy. I run the Keto and Krime YouTube channel. It's a crime spelled with a K and keto, like the diet. I also do some weight loss, but not a whole lot. But my main focus is true crime, just traditional true crime. But I also have as an atheist, I have a fascination with religion and cults and history. So I also do history and cult related content, such as I don't know, like the Quiverful movement. I did a whole series on the Quiverful movement. I've done a 4-parter on Jim Jones and the People's Temple, just that kind of stuff. And when you put a crime and a cult together, that's when I really get excited. So I really, really, really love that.
Okay. Well, and I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. First of all, I have a new channel member, Firebrand. Thank you for joining the channel. And in the chat today, we have Wildcard and Skits Crasher and Mr. Shadow Kitty and Mage Grey Wolf. And Mage has already started us off by saying no one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Nope.
So let's go ahead and start there. One of the greatest crimes of the church was the Inquisition. And to me, the biggest shocker was how long the Inquisition went on. Tracy, what do you think of the Spanish Inquisition?
Well, I wouldn't have voted for it had it been on a ballot. No,
I like her. Can we keep her?
any time you murder in the name of a god, I find it just deplorable. And what we have to say about anything about the Spanish Inquisition, about Bloody Mary Tudor, about in many of the Crusades, is they were more political than religious. Because if you serve a merciful God, why are you killing in their name? And then that you can come forward in the future with all the ethnic genocides in Africa and Uganda and Rwanda and things like that. When they're killing in the name of a deity or just purification, it's shouldn't have happened, should never happen. You know, we humans have too many natural disasters that we have to fight. Why are we doing this to each other?
Yeah, when I was a believer, one of the ways I would excuse a lot of that kind of thing was to say that, even though it was done in the name of religion, a lot of those things really were political. Like the Irish, the whole thing between the Catholics and the Protestants, it really has nothing to do with religion.
Nope, not at all. And for, the Spanish Inquisition that happened, and then you had, the rise of the Tudors, and then you had Bloody Mary Tudor essentially doing the same thing in England, to the Protestants, and then to bring Catholicism back into power. It's just this, it's all about consolidating power. What religion do I want to rule the country at this time? That's all it's about. And what's religion anyway? It's a mind control. It's a way to control the masses.
I was about to say, it very much is a tool of control. I mean, honestly, it's also a business. Like, it's a
Mhm.
tool of control and a business. And what better business model than to say, you have something wrong with you, sin, and there's nothing you can do but what we say to essentially rectify that. You have an immortal soul that will suffer for all eternity if you don't give us money and do what we say.
Mhm.
And like, so there's a carrot and a stick approach,
Mhm.
where your life sucks, when you're eating cabbage soup, you're a peasant, all of your earnings are being taken by your feudal lord, so you suffer, and it's like, oh, this is nothing compared to the suffering of a fiery hellfire,
Mhm.
and eternity in hell. So that's the fear part. But then also, well, if you do what we say, then this life is nothing but a stepping stone for the next stage where everything is sunshine, kittens, and rainbows. So there's the carrot. So yeah, it's really abhorrent, like, that it would be used as a tool of control, and still is. It absolutely still is used as a tool of control. And on a more recent, like, crimes, I honestly think that, well, it seems like a minor crime going against, what was it? Is it that the Hatch Act? Gigi, the one where preachers aren't allowed to do politics from the pulpit. There was
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Hatch Act. Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
I wanted to make sure, you're the more legally minded of us. And you see, like, especially during the rise of the Mango Mussolini, like, very much, like, they are absolutely breaking that law, and it's helping to not only further, the pandemic and make it worse because of the rising sentiment of anti-vaccine and just anti-science, anti-collectivism, anti-intellectualism, like, so many antis. It's just so bad.
Mhm.
But I mean, also, we're a backsliding democracy now, and it's about to get way worse when you see, like, this cultish mindset around 45, and how they're starting to put people in power so that they can just steal an election next time. The 2020 was a test run, and they're working out the kinks. And there are things going in now where states would be able to override the will of the people and just send their own electors, whoever they want, to you know the the electoral college and decide the president. Regardless, you could have 100% people voting for person A. If the Republicans want person B, then person B will get those electoral votes with what they're trying to push through. And I think it's Ohio, but don't quote me on that. I read the story, but I can't remember the state. But like, one or two states are doing that at least, and it's scary. It's absolutely scary. Like,
Mhm.
and not enough people are talking about it.
Tracy, I'm curious as to your opinion on the story that came out, oh, it was about 6 months ago, and if I remember it being 6 months, it was probably a year. That's the way memory works at my age. Yeah, the bodies that were buried in Canada, and they found them behind the church.
Mhm.
The Catholic schools where, the children were taken in as, live-in boarders, and, and then now they're finding the bodies.
Well, I actually did a video on that.
Oh,
It's
you
it's on
did?
my channel. And it's not just Canada. A lot of it was found in the biggest find in Canada was Kamloops in British Columbia, around that area, but it actually extended into the United States.
I figured it would. I was just waiting for the news, but I didn't see it.
The gentleman that started the Canadian school system, that school system, not the one for regular people, that sarcasm, uh, was actually based on the United States' system. So the United States came first, and then Canada based theirs on theirs. It's just the bodies were found first in Canada. But yeah, and the fact that the Catholic Church, was the main. They didn't create the schools, but they were commissioned by the government to run the schools.
Mm.
Um, that was, yeah, just another atrocity that that particular church has covered up.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, yes. I don't want to get political. I hate getting political, but
You are welcome to get political here. We go political a lot here.
but you can't find most civilizations on this earth have done something terrible to another civilization. We can't go all the way back and unravel everything. What we can do is fix it going forward. And I really think that the First Nations, which is the kind of the united front for most Canadian tribes, need to be paid some kind of retribution for what happened there, at least to the families that suffered the losses. I think the same should be done here for those that are found bodies here. But
I'd go beyond. I would say all First Nations people, all, indigenous, Native Americans, like all of them should be paid restitution because, again, we stole all of their land and we broke all of our treaties with them and we committed genocide against them, legit genocide with biowarfare. I mean, smallpox blankets and all. Like, we tried to commit a genocide. There's only a small fraction of the peoples and cultures left that we weren't able to stamp out. And that just shows how strong they are, and how, just, I'm trying to think of the word, but like to endure all of that and still have some of their culture, some of their traditions alive. Like, we need to be giving them more land, and we absolutely need to be paying them fucking restitutions, like all the restitution.
Absolutely. And I think it even goes beyond. I mean, giving them the rights to operate casinos was a good starting point here, but it needs to go way beyond that. And that wasn't even for this latest atrocity. That was just for, retribution in general. So yes, I think we do need, and I think the Catholic Church, for the ones they operated, needs to pay a substantial portion of that to them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not a very pleasant thought. I looked at a lot of pictures of what was found and listened to a lot of stories from First Nations people and the tribes that operated in our Northeast and right up along the Canadian border. So you have the Creeks, not the Creeks, but the Iroquois and the other tribes that were in northern United States talk about what happened. And if you're going to conquer people, you need to, and this goes for anybody that's conquering anybody, you need to assimilate them peacefully. There's no need to completely try to wipe them out and wipe out their heritage in general. And it's really disappointing because we were founded as a lot of people say melting pot. I consider us more of a tossed salad where everybody should be able to keep their own individual identity, but still being a proud American too. So it's just really, really sad what happened.
Tracy, one thing that I kind of looked for but didn't find, but I did not do a lot of research into this. I didn't dig very deep, and you probably dug a lot deeper than I did, and so you probably know. What did they find as the cause of death for most of these children? Was it natural causes? Could they tell? Was it even possible to tell?
Very ambiguous, but some of the causes of death were listed as disease, just maladies of living in close quarters, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So you had typhus, smallpox,
But it wasn't injuries or trauma.
Inconclusive, but there was a lot of reports of abuse at the school, so I would not doubt it. That's what happened. So yeah, abuse and probably sexual abuse too. Let's be quite honest.
Well, yeah.
So anything
it
that
was the Catholic Church running a lot of that.
It was the Catholic Church.
Let's not forget the fact that these schools were founded to essentially whiteify the people. Like, they were taking babies away from their families to essentially erase any cultural heritage they might have and to Anglicanize them. So, I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting. And speaking of the Catholic Church, real quick, I just want to say that, we as a society owe Sinead O'Connor an apology. Like, she may have pissed people off by ripping up a picture of the Pope, but she was trying to bring attention to something that we were not talking about in the national discourse at the time. like it was 10 years before we actually actively started talking about the child abuse that was going on at the hands of Catholic Church priests. And, she is owed an apology. Just saying. That was a career ending move, essentially. I mean, she's still making music as far as I know. But, she was pretty big and she could have been, the next Madonna, but she made her statement. And I feel like, we all owe her an apology for the crap that she went through.
Yeah, absolutely. But then she recently announced she was joining the Islam. I'm just like, come on, girl, don't do that.
Considering
But
their
yes,
prophet, married what, a 12 or 14-year-old.
yeah,
It's not that much different.
because they're feminists. It's just like
We have a really good question from Skiscratcher. What do you think is the worst atrocity conducted by a cult?
is that.
Yeah, that's a hard
me-
one. That one you've got to really think about.
I
19
honestly
kids and
think it would
counting.
be the worst atrocity I would say would be Jonestown, force feeding poison to babies and kids. Close second would be, Waco, and just, really the death culties that involve kids, I think, are the more like,
Yeah.
egregious of the atrocities. Like Heaven's Gate, it was sad, but they were all adults. Like it sucks, but like I don't feel as bad about, an adult making a choice for themselves as I do parents making the choice to unalive their children in the name of whatever their religious leader said. So, because kids don't really have the ability to make a choice. You don't choose who your parents are. You don't choose your religion as a small child. And also, like faith healing and like Christian scientists that like refuse their kids medical treatment and just anoint them with oils and let them die miserable, horrible. Yeah, fuck that. Like, and that's culty behavior to me too. But actual cult, it would be the Jonestown massacre, with Waco being in second.
I agree with Kitty. I think Jonestown was probably one of the worst. Waco, even though I think David Koresh was 75% and the cult was 75-80% responsible for that as a libertarian, I also say our government had a huge hand in that as well. That could have been handled better.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but yes, still, anytime that children are involved, and then Christian Science, I absolutely agree with you. The 12 Tribes cult, which is still in existence, they actually recruit people by way of a deli, like where you go in and buy a sandwich. They're called the yellow delis. They actually recruit and work children like slaves, literally. Look them up. 12 Tribes, started in Chattanooga, Tennessee, by a former school guidance counselor. They are wild. So anything that involves children, indoctrinates children, which could be any religion anywhere, I think that's the greatest atrocity.
I would agree with you that Jonestown was definitely in the top 3, but I think what is worse than killing children is torturing them.
Yeah.
And anywhere where children are forced to live, where they cannot get away from it, they are subjected to physical and sexual abuse. I would consider that even worse.
If you haven't seen it, there is a movie that not like any of the countless ones that have been made shot for shot on Jonestown, but there's a movie called The Sacrament that came out in 2017 that is heavily based on Jonestown, but it's called something else. But I'm a huge horror nut, and it's an excellent horror movie. But it tells the story of Jonestown kind of to a new audience, and some of the scenes in there are so disturbing they will haunt you. But if you're a fan of, if you want to know more about Jonestown, that's a good movie to watch. It's called The Sacrament.
Mo asks, could the atrocities of cults be amplified by long-term harm? For example, Mormonism and Scientology. And yeah, most definitely. that's one of the things that makes it hard to compare Jonestown to some other things, because Jonestown, once they committed their atrocity, that's it, they were over, whereas some of these others, they're not as severe, but they go on forever. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to compare.
I have had the great pleasure of talking to David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, his father, Ron
Cool.
Miscavige, and he told me their entire story and just the things that happen to families and children in Scientology, especially if they're signed over to the Sea Org, which I think is like a 1,000,000-year contract. Some of the, I mean, they literally, if you leave with nothing. He and his current wife left, I think they were in their 70s when they ran from the Scientology Center in one of the Scientology centers in Florida, or California is where he was. They ran. They had, because they had never worked independently. They had only worked for the church. They had no Social Security benefits to claim. They had nothing. They literally left with the clothes on their back and took a huge risk to get out. And that happens all the time. That's just an evil, evil, evil cult.
Agreed.
Okay, Firebrand brings up Salem witch trial was bad too. Yeah, I was thinking of that when we were talking about the Catholic Church. Obviously, this is not the Catholic Church; it's the Puritans.
Right.
But it was kind of the same. It was in a similar line to the Inquisition. It was trying to keep the faith of the Puritans pure.
Well, not only that though, but most of the targets were like the outcasts of society, or people with mental health issues, or even people that were. There was one woman. She was a widow, and she just kind of minded her own business. But there was a property dispute where somebody like wanted her property or didn't. It came down to literally petty neighbor shit, and the bitch was burned for it. And so it was used as a tool to oppress mostly women, but there were some men that were actually burned in the witch trials as well. Like,
there was one gentleman that was crushed to death with rocks because he stood up for his wife. I can't remember his name, but he actually kept telling them, another one, sir, like taunting them as he killed them. And I'm like, that's a bad MFer right there.
That is a bad way to go, though.
I looked at that and thought, he probably was welcoming death rather than torture by asking for more weight. At least he could end it.
Yep.
Yeah, eventually you're going to be crushed and it will be over. I mean, it's one of those things like I saw a warning sign, like somebody had on like an electric fence or something. It's like, do not touch, like it will kill you and it will hurt the entire time you're dying. And it's like, yeah, that whole thing, if you're going to go, you'd rather it be as quickly as possible, because prolonging it just prolongs suffering.
That kind of reminds me on a farm near where I grew up. I grew up in Alabama. There was a cattle farm not far, and the farmer had issues with people trying to climb into the pasture because cow tipping was a thing when I was growing up. And he finally put a big sign on all his fences that said, "You better be fast because the bull can clear this fence in 5 minutes." And he released a huge Brahma bull into his pasture. I don't know why that reminded me of that, but redneck memories.
I mean, I live in Florida right now. In fact, if I go out on the main road here and drive down that way, I will actually pass one of the Scientology centers here in Orlando, and it's kind of crazy to think that you usually think that, oh, it's mostly a West Coast thing. It's mostly a California like thing, but no, they have them other places too.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird to see right down the street from a Publix.
Yeah. The Sea Org headquarters is in Clearwater, Florida. The Sea Org, not Scientology, but their main people that dress like they're in the Navy and have an obsession with boats, because L. Ron Hubbard had an obsession with boats and liked to go out international waters where he could mess with young boys without fear of retribution. That's essentially what it was.
Yeah, one of the things that I find flabbergasting is the crimes that churches get away with. And, we hear a lot about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is definitely probably the biggest culprit, but it happens in every church. And when I say every church, I mean, I don't mean every single congregation, but, any church is subject to this, and we see it everywhere. Why is it, do you think, that churches get away with this so much?
I think overall, because especially here in the United States, we're still what high 70s, low 80s percentage of people that are religious. I know it's dropping. It's dropping, but it's such a heavily religious culture that it's just easy to keep it silent. That's how Josh Duggar got away with so much of his crap, is that their church covered it up. How did Bill Gothard get away with everything he was doing? Because it's such a cult of personality. I think that actually is a good word for it. Churches are sometimes cults of personality, and they're able to keep things silent, and then they're usually part of that good old boy, good old girl network that, if you are somebody in a lot of small towns and things like that, you're in the church. And it's just easier to keep things, I'm covering the Josh Duggar case right now. I'm also covering a big cult murder trial that was, affiliated with the LDS Church in Arizona and Idaho. And the same thing. It's just all the biggest politicians, all the biggest money makers are part of that church, and it's just easy to keep it hush hush.
I was going to bring up
LDS being Latter-day
political thing.
Saints.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
And even hospitals, like here in Florida, one of the largest hospital groups is Advent Health. And you see, religious iconography in all of them. And it personally makes me a little bit uncomfortable, the fact that it's still encroaching into other areas of life. It's like, if you want your religion, fine. I personally am looking forward to the day when religion is dead and gone the way of the dodo. But, I, being a libertarian socialist, I think that you should be able to do whatever you want as long as it's only impacting you. But it doesn't just impact you, because these organizations, these groups, they are worming their way into all types of areas where they really don't belong. Like, churches don't belong in schools, they don't belong in prisons, they don't belong in business, and they don't belong in like healthcare and hospitals. Like, because you could say, oh, well, it's my religious right to refuse service to this person because they're queer, or because, they're whatever. Like, it really bothers me just how ingrained in every aspect of society that religion has become. When this was founded to be a secular nation with a hard and fast separation of church and state, but even the Supreme Court right now is hearing a case that would erode that, where you wouldn't have the separation of church and state in requiring public funding of religious schools. There's a case now being heard before the Supreme Court that's basically, oh, well, it's against their, First Amendment rights to not be able to get public funding. It's really dumb. It's really dumb. And I just think, like, with the conservative majority that we have right now, it is only going to get worse. Like, Roe v. Wade is on the chopping block, and that is going to lead to a lot of suffering. It is not just the fact that, women are going to die because they can't get access to abortion, but you're also going to put an even greater strain on the system. It's, oh, well, why not just put it up for adoption? There are tons of kids in orphanages and foster care that, there's really no place for them. And a child that's not wanted, or that the parent can't provide for, is not going to have a good life. And I see, restricting a woman's right, to choose based solely on your religious beliefs as, just beyond the pale. It's really gross to me that you're trying to infringe your beliefs on another person's body. Like that's my, again, libertarian socialist, like, do what you want with your own body. Don't tell anybody else what to do with theirs. The only, I was telling Gigi this earlier, the only exception that I make to the you should be able to have full autonomy for your own body, whatever you want, is with vaccinations. I don't believe you should be pinned down and forcibly jabbed, but I do think that societal pressure of you can't use public transit, you can't, go to a restaurant or whatever if you're not vaccinated. That way, if you're living in the middle of nowhere and you don't interact with anybody, you're not really hurting anybody if you're not vaccinated. But because it's a decision that impacts more than just you, that's the only one where my libertarian sensibilities take a backseat to my collectivist. We need to do what's right for the overall whole of society.
Firebrand brings up a good question or a good issue that this is not a literal crime, but if there was a way to make it a literal crime, I would be looking to do so, which is I started preaching in a Pentecostal church at 8. I've been an atheist since 32. I'm 49 now and still working through the harm.
I was raised Pentecostal. I can certainly empathize with you, Firebrand. I absolutely can. I was never a preacher because that wasn't done in the Pentecostal church. That's what started me on my road to atheism, is that I couldn't be a preacher because I really wanted to be. But yeah, and my father actually grew up in a snake handling Pentecostal church. I mean, they were hardcore backwoods. Scottsboro, Alabama. The preacher later died from a snake bite because he wouldn't seek medical attention. Which
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh. But
no,
I mean,
I'm a stand-up comedian. I do bits about it all the time. I talk about how I used to speak in Klingon in the church to make people think I was speaking in tongues, and that's a true story.
Well,
you
were. I mean, speaking in tongues is supposed to be a foreign language that nobody understands. Nobody understood you, so if you were speaking in tongues.
And so yeah, I mean, that's his right. If he wants to pick up a snake, I wouldn't vote for it on a ballot again. But it's just stupid is the stupid does. That's called culling the herd.
Darwinism right there. It's a Darwin Award in the making.
But yes, the damage that's done, especially in a fundamentalist church like that. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Firebrand. I'm 46, and I still fear hell. There are still times that I fear hell. I wake up in cold sweats and things like that. I don't know if I'll ever get over that.
And that's a trauma inflicted upon children. Like, honestly, even after, before I became an atheist, I very much said if I ever have kids, I'm not going to raise them, with religion, at least not in the traditional sense, like teaching them about different religions of, okay, this group of people believes this and this group of people believes that, making it kind of clinical. And then when they came of age, if they wanted to pick a religion, go for it. But I wasn't going to endorse any one. But I mean, that was back after I left Christianity and became a pagan. I still planned on, incorporating and allowing them to participate in, child safe, like, pagan rituals, which, I mean, honestly, just about everybody who celebrates Christmas is doing child safe pagan rituals. So, but I digress. Like, it was going to be just taught from a cultural and historical perspective, not this is the one true way. Because even back then, like, I didn't believe there was one true way. And I don't know. I feel like the indoctrination of children, when parents are the world to their children, and that is their whole lens for viewing the world around them. And you see things like Jesus Camp. Jesus Camp made me actually throw up watching those children crying tears, ready to lay down their 6-year-old lives in a war, for, like, their religious extremist ideas. And I literally vomited after watching that, because it hit me. And that should be a crime. It absolutely should be a crime. subjecting children to that kind of trauma. It is psychological torture, and you're doing it to babies, and it will fuck them up for life. And if it's not, it's not considered a crime right now, but it absolutely should be.
Yeah, that and Kidnapped for Christ and God Loves Uganda. All three of those documentaries really made an impression on me. Really, especially the Kidnapped for Christ. I was sent to gay conversion camp when I was preteen. I was sent. It wasn't like what happened to those kids where they were kidnapped in the night and taken away. But I was sent to a camp every single summer for 3 years where it was obvious that my mother had told them something, because they were taking me aside and talking to me about, men and women should be together. You'll go to hell. I was verbally, it was right. It was obvious what they were up to, and, telling me that do you like girls? Just all this stuff. And it happened to me three summers in a row. Couldn't really do anything about it, but certainly didn't work. But, I had it easy compared to the kids that were in that camp. We weren't beaten or anything, but anytime you try to use religion to change somebody's what I call internal programming, that's so wrong.
And yet that's what religious people pride themselves on. Whenever I ask someone, what evidence do you have that your God is even real? The first thing they always go to is, it changed my life. I used to, but now and you can fill in the blank with just about anything. I used to be an alcoholic. I used to be angry, and now I'm more joyful. I used to be physically abusive, and now I'm gentle. And just they see it as a way that they have become more human, I guess. And yet at the same time, the answer I always come up with to them is, one, people make the same claims in every religion, and two, people do the same thing without religion.
And here's the thing. So many people are like, I found, God at the lowest point in my life. I just lost my family, or my parent just died. I just got a cancer diagnosis. Religion absolutely fucking preys on people when they are the most vulnerable, just like a cult. They prey on you when you're vulnerable, and then they break you down to build you back up the way that they want you to be. Thinking, feeling, and believing the way they want you to. And it's gross.
Yeah. I'm not an anti-theist, so to speak. I really don't care about religion so much, as long as it doesn't infiltrate everyone else's lives that doesn't want to be a part of it. And so that's why I kind of stand up as an atheist activist to keep the separation of church and state where it should be. But if you want to be religious, I don't care if you want to pray to a Hormel ham, go for it. As long as you're not forcing me to do it, not indoctrinating anyone else. That's just kind of the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
And indoctrination of children. I would like to see children. We're all born atheist or agnostic. I would like to see us let them be that until they reach some sort of age of accountability. There's a Christian term for you. Until they reach some sort of age where they can decide for themselves. And if there's any religion in schools at all, I would love it to be a neutral comparative religion class, because I think that could have been very, very beneficial to me as a growing up. But good luck getting that past some school boards.
One of the things that I was wondering about as a result of this question was, do either of you remember that kid that was on Phil Donahue? Gosh, it's been a couple of decades that he was preaching, and he was this fire.
Marjo.
Yes.
Marjo.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent documentary.
Remember seeing that.
Yeah.
I would be really interested in seeing what he's like today.
The last time I saw an interview with him, he was an actor in Los Angeles. He's completely atheist now. He admitted that the only reason he was forced to preach as a child, and that's how his family made their living. And then when he grew up, he kind of dropped out for a while and didn't do it, and then realized he couldn't make a living anywhere else. So he was an atheist while he was preaching as an adult, and just used it to get money. He told me that he told the interviewer there was like essentially groupies that would sleep with sleep with evangelists, and that's how he got his kicks.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah,
I
just
did
like a
not know
rock star, like a rock star. And he said he did it until
Wow.
his guilt just got the best of him, and that's why he let them make that documentary. Marjo just exposed himself so that he could step out of it in a really big way. And now he's an actor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, here's a comment from Vesta Freya, who says your guest will love that what recently happened in Canada with the passing of Bill C4. Now, I was not aware of this, so I looked it up. And I pulled it up as you guys were talking. That's one thing that's nice about having two people on. I can go look something up. But according to this, Canada has just passed a bill banning conversion therapy, causing a person to undergo conversion therapy.
Yep. There's actually quite a few states here in the United States that have also banned it. But it still happens under the guise of religion. For example, Bill Gothard, who owns or did until he stepped down because of sexual improprieties. He was the founder of, gosh, I can't think of it. And I've done a video on it. I'm just blanking here.
Did you say Bill Gothard?
Bill Gothard, yeah.
Okay.
He created basically what is the most well-known homeschooling curriculum around. The Duggars use it. All these homeschoolers use it, a lot of them. And part of that curriculum is basically teaching gender roles and heterosexuality. So it still happens under the guise of religion, but just in a very different way. There's no more camps, but it's like, yeah,
I actually, somebody I cared a great deal about unalived themselves after they weren't sent away to a camp, but I still feel a lot of guilt over this particular one because, I was young and naive and stupid. I was 18 years old, 17, right around that time. And I was like, hey, your parents are going to love you no matter what. Just tell them you're a lesbian. Just be honest with them. It's no big deal. It was a big deal. And very much the pray the gay away, you're a demon, and the stress of it just was too much for them, and they unalived. And it still eats away at me. That is one of my biggest regrets in my life. The fact of the matter is the parents already suspected. So even if I hadn't given that nudge of, just be honest, be yourself, your parents are going to love you. Because when I came out to my parents, I came out to my dad first as being bisexual, and he's like, I like chicks. I dig, I get why you would too. And that was it. He didn't say chicks. He said a different word, but I'm trying to, self-censor a little bit for Gigi.
I like your dad already.
Yeah, no, that was his phrase. Well, I like it, so I totally get why you would. And that was it. End of conversation. There was no argument. Now I've kind of lost my dad, and we used to have a really good relationship. Not so much anymore since Fox News just kind of rotted his brain a bit, and it's turned into a much more hateful, and that's another thing. And there's a huge religious spin on that. My father was never really a Christian. He was raised Catholic, but he was a deist. He bought me my first books on Wicca when I was a teenager and wanted to explore a different religion. He was completely open to that of, you find your own way to God. There is, no one way. He very much believes he's got a personal relationship with God, but he doesn't do the whole doctrinal stuff. At least he didn't. And now it's gotten a lot more. He's always been a Republican, but now he's less moderate, where it was just, fiscally conservative, but socially moderate. I wouldn't say socially liberal, moderate. he was like tolerable for a Republican, and now it's just the, you know, warmongering and the, you know, not wanting to listen to facts about things where it's like, oh, these minorities and they're, you know, sucking on the teat of the government, you know, with welfare and everything. It's like that. There are more white people on welfare than anyone else. And he was like, bullshit. And I show him the stats, and then, you know, he just shut up about it. But like, he still harbors those, even though he saw the, like, the facts right in front of him. It's just like the higher functioning and reasoning skills that he used to have, because my father was brilliant, and it's just gone now, and it's just talking points and hate and anger, and it really fucking saddens me. And religion plays a part in that too. And it just, yeah, like there was an article, I lost my dad to Fox News, and I recommend everybody read it, because it really does happen, where you have, you know, parents or grandparents that, while they might have been conservative, they were much more moderate and, you know, laid back about it, turning into like the fire and brimstone preacher version of a conservative, just full of vitriol and hate and toxicity.
I do need to break in to acknowledge the super chat. Thank you very much, asexual atheist, who says casting atheist bread on secular waters. Thanks for these convos. And there's a comment also that I was kind of patiently waiting to get to, because it was along with, no, it went a lot right along with what you were saying, Kitty, although you started to turn, but so I'm going to turn us back just a bit. But what Mage Grey Wolf says here is very similar to how I lived as well. Mage said, I have suicidal thoughts, and believing there is an afterlife gave me less reason to want to continue living. As an atheist, I tried to hold on to life despite this. And for me, being suicidal was what originally turned me to Christianity. Was, you know, I was told, okay, there's a God that loves you and wants you, and so I thought, okay, I can turn to this instead of suicide. But in the long run, you know, the promise of heaven led me to becoming even more suicidal, and I spent decades fighting this. And yeah, I used to go to funerals and get jealous. You know, why can't I die and go to heaven? Um, but I have experienced exactly what Mage is talking about, that once I became an atheist, I suddenly was able to let go of all that. You know, suddenly life has meaning. There's, you know, this is it. This is all you're going to get, so live it now. And instead of the, you know, tremendous desire to be dead so you can be in heaven. And now we are way off topic, which is my fault entirely.
No.
Oh, and Bill
Honestly,
Gothard's organization is the Institute for Basic Life Principles. And
Okay.
if you and he's heavily connected with the Quiverful movement, which is Steven Anderson and the Duggars. If you're interested in that, I have a whole playlist over on my channel where I've done like huge expose on that movement and all the people. Just giving myself a little promo. Sorry.
no, absolutely. But there was, I'm trying to pull up the news article for it. There was a little girl who committed suicide because her father had died, and she wanted to be with her father in heaven. And honestly, truly, yeah, to be with her father in heaven, a girl, 12-year-old, commits suicide. And while it's not a crime, like it is an atrocity, I think, just to humanity as a whole, what afterlife belief has done to people. Because this one life, as an atheist, this one life, you know, is all you have. And going to, like, you know, what Gigi was saying, when you believe in a better afterlife, it devalues the life that you have, where you're just waiting for the next one. You're not actually living your life. You're not enjoying your life. You're just anxiously awaiting heaven, Valhalla, afterlife, whatever you believe in the afterlife. And I honestly see that as tragic. And that is actually the thing that I find most tragic about religion, because it affects so many people. that they spend so much time worrying about the afterlife that they don't actually live this one.
Yep, that's exactly what I did. And Junie the Apostate echoes our thoughts, saying, I was suicidal because I thought nobody loved me except for God. So I wanted to go with Sky Daddy. Then I was going to go to hell if I did achieve that. So guess I'm still going to hell.
There'll be a lot of us
Fortunately,
there. It'll be fun.
yep. Vesta says, when my favorite niece came out as a lesbian, she was worried that it would change how I felt about her. It made me sad that something so trivial would change my opinion of her. Yeah, that is sad. When my son came out to me as being trans, I didn't handle it badly, but I didn't handle it well either. I mean, I certainly wasn't angry, but I wasn't as supportive as I could have been.
Well, it's hard because
Yeah.
honestly, now the people that I call my parents, if you ever heard me talk about my parents, are not my biological parents. They are the they are the parents of my high school best friend, and they've just they adopted me when times got really tough, and that's who I refer to. But when I came out to them finally, they basically told me they already knew that I was gay. And I said, well, why didn't someone tell me? And my mom was like, it's not my place to tell you. That's for you to decide. And my dad was kind of like your dad in a way. I came out to him. We were watching a movie, and I came out to him, and just basically we were sitting there having a beer, watching a movie. And I just said, hey, Dad, I like girls. And he just slurped his beer and said, I knew we had something in common. Basically the kind of and just kept on going. He's like the embodiment of Hank Hill. We just kept on going. But even me, I've talked about this with my wife, even us as a lesbian couple. If we had a child that came up that we raised, and if they came out to us as straight, gay, lesbian, would be no problem. Bisexual, got that, no problem. But if they came up to me and said, I'm trans or I'm gender fluid, I don't get that. I don't understand that. I don't have to understand it because I'm not. I'm lucky enough to be cis and understand what I am. So my first point there would be, okay, I understand, but let's go talk to someone. So I would take them to a counselor because I don't know how to help them, if that makes sense. And so I don't want you to be hard on yourself, Granny, because I don't think any parent is prepared for that other than to say, I love you, but let me take you to somebody who can talk to you about it. That would be my first inclination, but we don't have
Yeah,
children.
no,
So.
agreed. Like my son, he'll be 8 years old in April, and I don't I don't care, like what, he ends up being. If, he is any part of the alphabet mafia or none of it. Like, it does not matter to me as long as he is happy and the person that he is in a relationship with treats him well. That's it. That is all I care about. But I do absolutely agree, if it turns out, like, if he's bisexual, I'm bisexual. I get that. I have a point of reference to relate to, but being cis, I wouldn't know. I have lots of trans friends that I could go to and ask for help. Just like I have friends that are autistic that, they're adults, and I'll ask them, what's your perspective on this? Because my son is on the spectrum. So I don't understand how his brain works, and nobody truly understands how the brain works. But, being neurodivergent, I don't get it. So I have his therapist that he sees for that. And I, again, will talk to people I know that are neurodivergent, that are on the autism spectrum, that have been through some of the struggles that he is now. And, it's also comforting to see that light at the end of the tunnel, that, you have people that are fully functioning, members of society. And yeah, they might have a diagnosis of autism, but that doesn't make them any less. They're still perfectly, they're normal. Like, I mean, neurodivergent is not abnormal to me. It's just different, different but not less. And So I do try to utilize, people that have a better understanding of things that I don't. Um, so I'm
Okay,
just
I
saying,
want
like,
to
you're
get to a few comments here from Junie because I think they're important, even though they're not exactly on topic, but we're off topic anyway. So let's go to these. Junie says, "I still feel suicidal and don't plan on going past a certain age, but all the people that are pushing anti-trans things on me make it hard for me to keep going." And then Junie says, "My daughter is really the only person I keep on going for." And Junie, we love you. Junie, there are lots of people who love you, and anyone who is pushing something that's anti-trans on you, you know how often I say this, fuck them.
Gigi's dropping the F-bomb, so you know it's serious. Just, just saying, like, if Gigi's busting out the F-bombs, you know it's serious. But no, seriously, Junie, you know that, I absolutely adore you. And I've missed being able to hang out with you while you've been off doing your other things. So maybe we'll do a movie night soon.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
I don't
And
know
then
you, Junie, but I believe you're probably a very good person, and I hope you have somebody in your life that you can talk to, and maybe even a professional counselor you can talk to, because the world is not helped by you exiting it. It's only hurt. So don't,
Exactly.
please talk to someone.
And then Junie also said, "I recently came out to my dad as trans. It broke his heart, and he still thinks I need to go to religious counseling. Asks me if I think what I'm doing is right." And the answer is absolutely what you're doing is right. I mean, if this is who you are, then this is who you are. And if he can't accept you for who you are, that's his problem, not yours.
Yes, this is
And he
absolutely.
doesn't deserve you.
My
You need to live your best life.
My poor conservative father, he ended up with 4 gay children, a gender fluid grandson, and 2 mixed race grandchildren, and loves them all. It is completely changed him. He's still a red hat wearing Republican, but he's a much more moderate red. Well, he was never super right wing anyway, but he's just, love my dad. Unfortunately I lost him during COVID, but that experience really did change him.
I'm sorry.
But he took care of my brother who died of AIDS till the day he died. And that's just, he's the perfect example of somebody that did it for his children. And he's just, I miss him.
I'm sorry.
Mage Greywolf has some good advice. When I feel suicidal, I tell myself there might be a time when someone needs me, and if I end it, I won't be there to help.
Yep.
An asexual atheist says, "Junie the apostate, hang in there. I care about your wonderful self."
Agreed. But so much of this trauma could be pinned back on religion, and even if it's not like a legal crime, it's a crime against humanity. Religion is a crime against humanity. Mic drop.
Well, I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but there is a movie that is it's Jewish survivors of the Holocaust. It's an old movie. And they put God on trial for the Holocaust.
Cool.
Let's see. Yeah, it's just called God on Trial. I remember seeing it, but it is part of the Masterpiece series on PBS. Look that up, God on Trial. It's just Jewish survival. It actually takes place just after Auschwitz was liberated, and they put God and the church on trial for what happened to the Jewish people. And it's so fitting here as to things that may not be legal crimes by our law, but should be. And a very uplifting movie.
Speaking of putting God on trial, and a segue back into our original topic, let's talk about creationism. And, obviously, that does not belong in schools, and teaching it is a crime. And yet, there are so many people that want to push that agenda.
I mean, it goes back to the anti-intellectualism I was talking about earlier. The religion is used as a tool to control people, and when your populace is uneducated, they are easier to control. And honestly, not only, does that lead to, I mean, you can draw a direct parallel from, creationism and not believing the science to the anti-vax issue we're having right now with COVID and people not believing the science. It very much correlates together. You start laying those foundational seeds of doubt against, established science, and you have a myriad of different outcomes because of that they might not seem connected, but they absolutely are.
Mm-hmm.
No, Jesus did not ride on a T-Rex. I still do want to
And
visit that museum sometime, though.
Confederate
Just
soldiers didn't shoot pterodactyls?
no, they did not. Oh,
Oh
and
my goodness.
another thing, Confederate soldiers were fucking traitors to this country. They're not heroes, and we should not be naming schools and military bases off fucking traitors. But no, it boggles the mind, how so many people are being taken in by this, but then you realize like religion is all about making you feel good. And it's about, playing to your preconceived notions and biases. Notice that your God, the God of your religion usually hates the same people that you hate. I am a creationist and that I believe man created God. Man created God in his own image to basically pat him on the back for things, that they want, recognition for, and to hate the same people and to give justification for hating the same people they already hated. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to see God, just go look in the mirror. Honestly.
So, Tracy, what is your favorite church crime to talk about?
Oh goodness. That would be the Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow case, which is the big Mormon LDS case that I'm covering. Oh goodness. Basically, Lori Vallow was a Mormon girl that grew up in California. She was married several times. Not that that makes her a bad person, but it's indicative of what's going on here. She eventually was married, I think, to her fourth or fifth husband, and she met Chad Daybell, who was the author of a series of apocalyptic novels based on the Mormon view of the end times, and met him at a conference. They instantly were attracted to each other and basically thought that they had been married at some point in past lives, because Mormons believe that. And they got themselves sealed in the church, even though they both had living spouses. And then the murders began. Her brother, Alex Cox, who's a whole study in and of himself, almost seemed to like take on the effect of her enforcer. And so he killed her present husband. He said in self-defense. And then they had a niece that was also, they had started their own basic little cult that was just these wild beliefs you wouldn't even believe if I told you. But anybody that opposed them suddenly disappeared or died. So they had a niece in the cult and her husband that was trying to get custody of their kids. Alex Cox attempted to kill him, failed to do it, and then Alex Cox himself mysteriously died. Her two children were killed mysteriously. Their bodies were hidden for about 6 months until they finally dug them up on his property in Idaho, but he didn't do it. I'm being sarcastic. And then his wife that he was married to also died from mysterious causes. And so all this evidence has been linked back, and they think it's just this big old, these two thought they were God's chosen two, and they were wiping out anybody that did not believe that.
Goodness gracious.
And that trial will be coming up either at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. It keeps getting pushed off. But
And how many bodies do they know of?
see, Charles Vallow, Tylee, JJ, Tammy Daybell, 4.
4.
And I have a whole on playlist on my channel. I've even summarized and reviewed all of his batshit crazy books. So I have been knee deep in that case.
Does he actually sell any of his books?
Yeah, believe it or not, he was pretty popular with Mormon audiences.
Mm.
I mean, it's kind of like they were kind of rip-offs of the Tim, was it the LaVey the Left Behind series, kind of Mormon rip-offs of those.
Oh,
in my opinion. LaVey, like I was thinking Anton LaVey. LaHaye, they were kind of rip-offs of those books, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, Philip, yes, they are actually in separate jails. Lori is in jail in women's prison in Idaho. He's in jail in the men's prison in Idaho, but Lori's being charged in multiple states. So I don't know where she'll actually stand trial. Idaho or Arizona. And believe it or not, the Mormon Church has, of course, separated themselves completely from them. Now, in the defense of the Mormon Church, their beliefs were quite fringe, but a lot of it is that a lot of the core beliefs are based on LDS teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another YouTube channel, the L Mom, like the L word, the L Mom. She's a good friend of mine. She does nothing but Mormon content. So if you want to know more about Mormonism, go check out her channel. She was raised Mormon and then came out as gay, and of course left the church, and has devoted her channel to educating people on what the Mormons believe and what the Mormons teach.
It kind of sometimes makes you almost feel like maybe there is a God, and the God thinks religion is a joke.
He's got to have a good sense of humor. If he or she does exist, it's got to be a great sense of humor.
I don't see it as a great sense of humor. I see it as, they're a sadistic, domestic abuse person.
Well, that would be if what the religious people say about God is true. But I think they've got it completely all wrong, that if there is a God, that's why Tracy's dad, or was it your granddad, ended up with all these relatives that were LGBTQ.
That was my dad.
That's God's idea of a joke. You think this religion is true? No, these are the things that are really true.
I think it would, if there is one, he's probably more of the clock maker that just built everything and set it in motion and let it does its own thing, kind of hands off, laissez-faire.
I
for
would
me,
agree with you.
It was basically the Big Bang, so to speak, was God shooting his load into the sock, and then it got tossed under the dresser, never to be thought of again. Like, if there's a God, that's my way of picturing God. It was they did something and it happened, and then it is never thought of again. It's gonna just hang out under that dresser. You're never gonna find it until you move out.
Actually, I think it went splat on the projection window.
I hate you, Gigi.
Mage Grey Wolf has an interesting comment or question.
We need to explain that comment first, because this goes to a conversation that Kitty and I had before the show started.
Okay, so I was talking about when I was working at a movie theater, and how I had constantly having to clean up like used condoms, and the worst one was when someone took their used condom and flung it up at the glass in front of the projector, and I had to stand on the back of the chair and then like scrape it down, because you couldn't put a step stool back there because there was a wall directly behind the seat. So I'm on my tiptoes on the back of this chair, like teetering with a broom handle. Just it was a nightmare. And if you're going to fuck in a theater, please at least wrap up the condoms and take it with you when you go, Don't just leave it behind.
We were also, because I also worked in a theater, my main question was, we found things like whole pizza boxes, like large pizzas, buckets of KFC chicken in auditoriums. I mean, I just kept wondering, how did they get these in here? you know, what bag is big enough to slide an extra
Um,
large pizza in?
whenever we found those, it was because they were bringing them from outside. They basically would have somebody go in
Oh,
to the theater, open the exit that leads straight to the outside, and bring it in, and then sneak it off to their seat. And once we started like locking those doors, or at least making it so you couldn't open them from from the outside, it lowered it a little. And when we started checking like theaters like right before the movie started a little bit more, then we would, because they would usually right before the movie started, like as the lights dimmed during the trailers, that's when they'd try to sneak the stuff in. So we were
oh,
able to catch them and stop them that way.
that's cool.
We would occasionally sneak in popcorn. We would put it in a paper lunch sack and put it under our coats. And being from Wisconsin, everybody was wearing heavy winter coats. So seeing someone in a heavy winter coat was nothing. And it's easy to throw a small bag of popcorn in there.
Yeah.
I
Oh, I
used to wear those like baggy like cargo pants with like the 10 million pockets. I wore boys pants because girls pants didn't have pockets. So like I was wearing my Jinkos, and I would have like my snacks tucked in there. Um, and then I would, the one benefit of working in a movie theater is getting to see the movies for free. So on my day off, I would plan it out so I could watch all the movies that came out. I just go theater hopping from one to the next. And that was a great benefit.
Yep.
Wasn't worth cleaning up people's bio waste, but it was a nice perk.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I would sneak in candy in my pockets and stuff, and then we got free popcorn.
Yep,
So,
popcorn and drinks if you brought your own container, because they cared
exactly.
about the containers, not the actual soda
Exactly.
or popcorn.
Exactly.
Okay, tangent over.
Interesting.
Back to how horrible religion is.
Yep. Yep.
My
Um,
anti-theist heart pitter patters with delight over this one.
Let's see. Let's make it personal. Tracy, what is the greatest crime that you personally have either experienced or saw in a church or heard about from firsthand witnesses?
Oh goodness. I think for me, I had a very, very religious aunt that remained Pentecostal her entire life and ended up dying of a tumor that was, I think, pretty curable with surgery, but she relied on faith healing instead of going to the doctor. My grandmother had a very similar tumor and did have surgery and lived. Of course, she later died of complications for her type 1 diabetes, but the tumor did not kill her. She lived. And even she tried to convince my aunt to please have the surgery, but she wouldn't. No, Jesus would heal her.
Mm,
That's the one that I sticks out of my brain. I was just a very little kid, but I remember that.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kitty, same question.
Well, I mean, the worst one was, the person that I cared about, like, unaliving themselves over it. But also, there was this one guy. So I didn't actually attend this church like traditionally. Like I was already a pagan, but there was a church that they did something that I actually agreed with, and they called it the Well. And every Friday night they would basically open their doors to like their rec room. They'd have music playing, they'd have cheap food like just burgers, hot dogs, chips, and so you could play pool or video game consoles. And so they had adults there to supervise and keep everything safe for the kids. And it was a good thing for kids to do, that it didn't cost anything if you didn't buy food, and you could hang out with other teenagers in a controlled environment. But there was one person there that worked in the kitchen, and I actually stopped volunteering because of it, because they started trying to like make moves on my 16-year-old self when they were like 40. And
Mm,
so it kind of creeped me out. And while I liked the concept of it, the execution, because I doubt I was the only one, you know.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it was just the going for young girls thing that I was like, that's pass for me. Thanks.
For me, it's kind of a tie between two, but only one is actually a crime. The other one is more just kind of cringe. The one that was actually a crime was in one church that I attended. There was a man that was accused by 6 different women of being sexually inappropriate. Now, how sexually inappropriate, I don't know. I don't know who the women were, and I don't know exactly what they said he did. But you know, the church then put him under discipline, and he didn't want to be under church discipline, so he and his wife left. Actually, I take it back. Just he left. His wife stayed. And eventually he came back, and they said that he now was willing to accept the church discipline, and so he was welcomed back into the church. But on the day that he was welcomed back into the church, he did it to me. And it happened on more than one occasion, and it was never enough to say it was sexual assault, because it wasn't. But it was always, a power thing. For one thing, this guy was huge. He was about 6'4". He was at least 350, possibly 400 pounds. But he would shake hands and he wouldn't let go. And he made it quite clear, you do not leave until I let you leave. And that night, what it was he pulled me into a hug. And I've told this story before, that I did not want to hug this man. So I dropped my head. And because I am short, my head ended up right in the middle of his belly, which was incredibly embarrassing. But I could not move because he did not let me go for a while. And yeah, I just was flabbergasted with the pastor standing 2 feet away, either didn't notice or didn't say anything, and here this guy is being welcomed back into the church, promising not to assault women, and he's assaulting me right in front of the whole congregation. So that was one. The other one that was just, more cringe, and it really isn't a crime at all, was we had a youth pastor that had an affair with a married woman in the church. Now, the youth pastor was married, and his wife could not have children. And he had an affair with another woman in the church, and she got pregnant. And she was diabetic. And because she was diabetic and she had one child, it was dangerous for her to have another. So her husband had a vasectomy. So as soon as it was known that she was pregnant, they knew that it wasn't his. And yeah, so that was a huge scandal when the one thing I really remember is the senior pastor, announcing that there was some church business to take care of, and please, everyone under 18 leave the sanctuary. And then his reaction was, if this is what's going on among the shepherds, what's going on among the sheep?
Drama.
Yeah.
Honestly, uh, she probably should have had a tubal done, because it's all you never know, the worst could happen, and in that situation, I personally would have had the tubal done, and then you wouldn't have gotten caught. Hey, cheating is wrong, but when it comes down to it, as long as the adults are consenting to it,
Right.
I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If the 2 adults decided to cheat on their significant others, that's none of my business.
Mhm.
But
Well, the
yeah.
real problem was what it did to the youth group, because it's the youth pastor is cheating on his wife. That was devastating to the youth group in the
Oh,
church.
I can imagine,
Mhm.
because yeah, how can you expect somebody to hold authority over children trying to mold and shape young minds if they're going to be so, blasé about, don't covet your neighbor's wife.
Yep. Uh, Well, with that, we are getting near the end of our time, and so I'm going to give both of you a chance to express some final thoughts and plug your own channels or shill for whoever you should so choose. So, Tracy, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, crime is bad, but crime done in the name of a sky daddy or a religion is even worse, in my opinion. And if you like true crime, if you like cults, if you like history, come check me out at Keto and Crime here on YouTube.
Okay, very good. And you now, right now, you're covering the Maxine Ghislaine case and the Drugger case and the Jesse Smollett case.
Correct. Those are the three. I'm doing as many updates as I can. I did daily updates on the Rittenhouse trial because it was streaming, and on the Ahmaud Arbery because it was streaming.
Mm-hmm.
None of these are streaming. The two are in federal court, and they've got it locked down. And then they're not streaming the Jesse Smollett either. But I am reading as much as I can and giving as many updates per week as I possibly can.
I like this. Asexual atheist says, I never liked the God is my shepherd metaphor. Shepherds eat their flocks. And then Junie responds, what if that's why God wants us to go to heaven?
It's a cookbook. To serve man. It's a cookbook. I knew you guys would get that reference.
After all, he does like the smell of burning flesh and barbecue.
There was an episode of The Twilight Zone, and it was called To Serve Man. And aliens come to Earth, and they essentially up our technology, and they're basically making a paradise here and saying that they have a book and that they've only been able to translate the title, and it says To Serve Man. And as they're loading a bunch of humans onto their ship to be taken to their planet where they think they're going to get even better stuff, they realize that it's actually a cookbook and they were planning on cooking the people.
Yep.
So,
yep. I remember that one. One.
Makes sense. Like, a lot of it makes sense if you think about it that way.
It does. It does. And I've started asking some Christians that, how do you know your God is good? I've yet to have anyone give me an intelligent answer.
Because they told you? I mean, your abusive spouse is going to tell you that you're not going to be able to do any better, that nobody's going to want you, and no one's going to tolerate you. And they might get you to believe that. That doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
You're only hearing what that abuser wants you to hear. There's also an interesting one, the whole, the God of the Bible is actually the devil, because essentially, the person doing all the evil, if they, ended up winning, like if Satan was the one to actually win and started the religion and everything, like history is written by the victors. So, there was that I heard a while back, and it was like, that's an interesting thought experiment to go down of, what if God is actually evil but says it's good because it won and it got to write the book.
Yep.
Mage Grey Wolf says, have you heard of the situation with Sophie Long?
No, I might have to Google that.
Okay. Kitty, do you have any closing thoughts or anything that you want to shill for?
Well, be gay, do crime, but either rich. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, religion, I think, is bad. I honestly think that at this point, there is nothing religion gives that cannot be achieved by secular means, be it, soup kitchens, orphanages, community, and, charity. We have secular organizations for all of them. And at this point, religion is doing net more harm than good. I honestly do believe that. Now, I don't care what an individual person wants to believe or do, so long as it's only impacting them. But again, as a collective whole, religion is doing more harm than good. And definitely, go and check out Keto and Crime. I'm going to be watching her back catalog because I'm a bit of a true crime fanatic. I watch a lot of true crime stuff. I think a lot of women do, and people think it's weird for women to watch true crime, but they need to realize that a lot of women watch it for pointers on how to not become a statistic. It's like, oh, that bitch did a dumb. Okay, let me not do that dumb, so maybe I don't end up like her. So very much so, it is about learning from others' mistakes so that we don't become a statistic. Um, Nobody wants to get knocked off the census prematurely, but yeah. So the Catholic Church really should apologize and pay reparations for the child sex abuse, for the countless generations of indigenous people that they obliterated, um, and even for the harm that their anti-abortion rhetoric has done, because there are tons of women that die in childbirth, or children that die or suffer in because they were brought into this world when they either weren't wanted, or they weren't going to be provided for, and it is doing more harm than good. um so yeah, I think the church needs to pay reparations for all of its crimes, and that's really about it. Like I don't have much more to add because
Oh,
I
that's
am painting
okay.
with a
That's
broad
plenty.
brush.
That's
It's a
fine.
pretty broad brush, but this is one of those few times where I don't mind painting with so broad of a brush, because I do really see it as just harmful, like
Mm-hmm.
truly harmful.
Okay, Mage Grey Wolf says, brief summary. Sophie is a 10-year-old girl who claimed her mother's boyfriend raped her and her mother watched. And it seems her mother was in good with the judge. Now her father has kidnapped her and is on the run after a decision that she go with a third party. That sounds like it would make a very interesting show. Um, that that sounds like a very interesting case.
Pardon me while I remove my jaw from the floor. Like, how? I mean, I don't understand how a parent could do that. Like, parents can be shitty. Parents can be terrible. Like, all children deserve parents. Not all parents deserve children. First off, but there's a difference between being a little bit neglectful, or maybe even being a little bit too liberal with corporal punishment, which is bad. Don't do it. Don't spank your kids. It does more harm than good. But I digress. Like, there's a big difference between being a bad parent and being a fucking monster. And
Mm.
like, that to me transgresses beyond just being a shitty parent to being an actual monster. I mean, any parent who would willingly allow their child to be subjected to that kind of trauma and harm, just no, fucking nope. I'm gonna stop because no, I have words that are not going to be put on stream. But let's just say all the bad things to this woman, all of the bad things, all bad, nothing good in her life, deserves no good.
Tracy, do you have some playlists?
Yes, I do. I have lots of playlists. I have
Okay, good. Because Firebrand says, I've been married 25 years and my wife goes to sleep to shows like those true crime shows. So it's Firebrand. You can just direct your wife to Tracy's channel and put up some playlists, and that will be something for your wife to go to sleep to.
Oh, I'll be. I said I'll be watching the back catalog. Like, I got some new stuff. Like, I'm all caught up on Bailey Sarian, so
oh,
I
she's
I
awesome.
got. Oh, she's so good. I love her. She's hilarious.
Bailey and
So
Stephanie Harlow are two of my favorites.
yeah. Oh, what was the other one? Goodness, I can't remember her name right now, but she's really well researched. But she does like a makeup and true crime one as
Uh,
well,
F-
but I can't remember her name.
Fundy Friday.
No.
That's all right. You go ahead and think of it. I'm going to go ahead and close down the show, and if you come up with it, you can post it.
Danielle Kirsty.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Her name's Danielle Kirsty.
Okay. And with that, we need to let you know that this week my produced video is on. I'm doing a Christmas special, so I'm doing a response to a Christian who did a video on 6 things you might not have known about the Christmas story, and he makes one of the strangest claims that oral traditions are better than or oral is better than written. We can be more accurate if we have oral stories than if we have written ones, which is just plain weird.
Did you never play telephone as a kid?
I know that's what I asked in the video. It's kind of, so that's coming up this week. Next week, I'm not sure who I'm going to have on. I'm trying to leave things a little bit loose for the next couple of weeks because there's some stuff going on in my personal life, and so I may end up canceling live streams. So I'm just going to probably do something Christmas themed. I'm thinking like atheists take over Christmas, and we can talk about what our atheist Christmas traditions are. And so that's going to be next week if it doesn't get canceled, and I'm not sure who I'm going to have on for that. But make sure you check out Tracy, and everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your wonderful comments, Junie. You hang in there. We love you,
Please.
girl. Yes. And just find a way to hang on, see a therapist, see whatever you need to do to hang in there, because it can get better. It really can, and sometimes it takes
Found
a long time.
family is sometimes actually found family is usually better than biological family, blood family. Like you have a found family here, people that care about you, people that love and respect you, not because of a necessity of, oh, you have to feel obligated to it because they're biologically related to you. No, fuck that. We chose you. Okay?
Hmm.
We choose you. You didn't get to choose them, so you have us, and we have your back.
And Judy says, "Will do." And with that, everyone, take care and live your life.